What's up, guys? Welcome back to the channel. If you're new around here, I'm Uncle Reddit, and this is r/ProRevenge. Just got done working on a Tales from Tech Support video that's going to go up tomorrow morning, and which is your Monday morning, most people. If you want to see the cats, they showed up for that video, but not so much for this one. So, yeah, you'll have to go over to the other channel, watch Tales from Tech Support to see those guys. So, all right, let's get into some stories. I went from school teacher to chairman of the board of a big company for the sake of revenge. When I was a tiny kid, my father was my best friend. He worked multiple jobs to support my family, all while powering his way through law school. He even built a couple small businesses from the ground up with a couple of his friends. All while doing this, he managed to be the best dad ever, spending as much time as he could with my mother, myself, and my baby siblings. One day we found out that he had stage 4 stomach cancer, the kind that you don't recover from. My mother and I stayed by his side all the way till it was all over. The last memory I have of my father was when he was completely immobile, practically a vegetable at this point, with tubes going in and out of his body, and me just praying that he'd still be able to remember who I was. All the guy could do was smile at me just to let me know he still recognized his son, even if the doctors told us most of his memories would be gone. Eventually, he fell into a coma for some days before waking up to say goodbye to my mother, who was by his side when he died. She was a housewife, so we really didn't have much to go on after his death. Enter my grandfather. He was one of those self-centered boomer types who makes everything about himself. After my father died, he'd used the newspaper obituary to boast about his dead son's grades and achievements, which I realized seemed to be the only thing my dad was to him. Just in case you were wondering, yes, we are Asian. My mother was grieving and trying to find a way to make ends meet, and my grandfather graciously offered to help her control my father's 2 businesses to help support us. My mother agreed because she didn't have any experience. While we grew up, the 2 businesses didn't provide much for us, likely because my father was one of the big reasons they were thriving. Mom was in and out of multiple jobs just to keep us floating. My grandfather offered to help put me and my siblings through school. I managed to score some scholarships with some good schools growing up, so thankfully he didn't have to do as much for me, but we were really glad that he helped out with my siblings. After I made it out of school, I found out that my family was broke, and my 2 siblings were still making their way through medical school. My sister even offered to stop and just get a job, but I told her to keep going because she was doing so well and that she deserved to graduate. My grandparents had cut us off because they didn't approve of the directions my siblings took in life, especially my sister, who was, for them, too female to have a career in medicine. My grandmother's a bit of a misogynist. Why are you wasting your time and money becoming a doctor? You're just going to have children and quit. I was working as a high school teacher when I was contacted by one of my dad's old business partners for one of his companies. After I asked him about how the company was doing, he told me that my grandfather, who was still in control of my father's shares, was siphoning money from the company for himself, and he was earning way more than he was giving me and my siblings for our education. So all our lives he'd been making us feel indebted to him for money that was supposed to be ours to begin with, and he lied to us by telling us that Dad's companies weren't making any money for us at all. We also realized that when he cut us off, he was cutting us off from our own money, forcing my siblings to drop out and give up careers that they'd been working their whole lives for. What's worse is that this was our father's money, and we know that he'd want it to help us provide for our futures even after he died, and here comes his a-hole father basically crapping on his legacy for his own enrichment. I even found out that he used his position to take possession of the company's office space and force them to set up shop in a smaller, cheaper office while renting the original space out under his own name to the company's competitors to make money from them too, all while I had to work multiple jobs to help my mother and siblings pay the bills. Cue revenge. My grandfather's biggest weakness has always been his pride. In fact, I suspect that he wanted us to think he was helping support us out of his own pocket because he wanted everyone to think he was some kind of hero, when in reality he was financially choking us. I recognize that no matter what my grandfather said, my siblings, my mother, and I were legally the owners of my father's company shares. So after having a statement signed by the 3 of them, I approached all the board of directors, sans my grandfather, and let them know that I was now that sole representative of my late dad's estate. My grandfather also made himself chairman of the board. According to the company records, he did no work for the company at all, so the position was just a name that allowed him to receive money. So I convinced them that since he was only chairman as representative of my father's estate, that he may be chairman. I didn't intend to keep the position because I didn't have the experience for it. Then I contacted other members of my extended family about my grandfather's unethical practices with the company's office space. He was eventually pressured by them into evicting the company's main competitor from their office space. Serves him right for conniving with my grandfather to take the company's old office space. At the next board meeting, I prepared for the moment I'd been waiting my entire life for. When he entered the conference room to preside over the meeting as the chairman, he found his chair facing away from the table with all the board members already seated at the table. And like a Bond villain, I spun the chair around to reveal to him that I'd been the one sitting there the entire meeting. I told him that the company and my family no longer needed him, and that I'd be taking control over representation of my father's estate. "Do you know that I'm the one who put him and his siblings through school?" he said in shock. I only went, "No, Dad did." The look of sheer embarrassment on his face was perfect. I've never seen him look defeated my entire life until that moment, and this sort of satisfaction could not be achieved by simply ratting him out. I stepped down from the chairman position and took a job in the company's treasury department as a bookkeeper, with a meager salary, but at least now any profit sharing or dividends that the company released would go where my father wanted it to go. And finally, one of the first decisions I got to make as a board member before stepping down was to give my mother a permanent job that she deserved. My grandfather's now jobless. He spends all his time at home, and because he spent his life being selfish and self-centered, he has no friends. All he had going for him was being able to power trip over other people and boasting about his assets and achievements. Even my grandmother's had it with him, and the two don't even sleep in the same room anymore. I hope he lives the rest of his short life regretting that he didn't live his life with more compassion and humility. Edit. I've gotten a lot of comments about the legality of what went on. During all this, the only lawyer working in the company was my grandfather, and we all know he did jack squat. When we hired a team of actual helpful lawyers, they told us exactly the same things you guys pointed out. They're still trying to clean everything up so we don't get into big trouble. Update. Apparently, my sister saw this post and just informed me that he's kind of miserable now because his wife is angry at him because he siphoned what was left of their money to an extramarital sugar baby he had in probably another attempt at getting someone to affirm and glorify him. I guess he hasn't learned. Wow, that's a long one. So yeah, humility goes a long way. Look, there's a difference between having pride in yourself, and you know, people say pride is bad too, but you have to have some self-worth. You have to have some self-confidence. You have to do what you have to do to keep your self-esteem up, except for screwing over friends and family. You shouldn't be screwing anybody over, but especially not your friends and family. Anyway, that story was long enough. You guys got the whole moral there. Neighbors kept parking in our lot. I froze them out. This happened around 20 years ago. Our family owned 2 apartment buildings, 3 units each. We lived in 2 of them, rented out the other 4. There's nothing but these 3 flats lining both sides of the road for about a mile. Not all have parking. On the side streets are houses and very little street parking. We had more land than most of these units, since it was also our home. So we had parking for around 16 cars. Everything was fine for literally decades. Then cars started appearing in our parking lot that were not our tenants. I blocked one in one day. We went outside to see this a-hole drive through our bushes and across the yard to get out. I called the cops. Nothing they could do. So I called a tow company and had them put up signs. We'd have to call them to have the car towed. The signs seemed to work. No more random cars. Until New Year's Eve one year, I arrived home and every space is filled. There are even cars on the street blocking in the other cars. I am beyond pissed. I call the tow company. They can't do anything for a few hours because they're so busy. We're in the Chicago suburbs. It's below 0 out. I have an idea. I dig out the lawn sprinklers and hoses. I run one hose inside to the laundry room faucet and turn on the hot water. This way the hose and sprinklers won't ice up, but the cars and ground sure did. 3 sprinklers moved every half hour or so for almost 5 hours. Every car, every square inch of the parking lot, the street by the cars encased in ice. I made it a point to spray ice in the locks, between the window seals and glass, in the grills, put away the sprinklers and hoses and went to bed. 4 a.m., furious pounding on the doors, doorbells ringing non-stop. We just smiled and called the cops, waited until they arrived and went outside. Cops were holding back laughter. These people were told to park here by their friend, who owned an apartment several buildings away, the same idiot who drove over our bushes. I pointed to the tow sign and told the people to move their cars or get towed. In our town, cops can ticket on private property with the owner's permission, so all cars were ticketed. They were also towed since nobody could get in their vehicles. Wish we had it on video. I would love to have seen that. I can't believe you didn't at least get a picture. Even 20 years ago, everybody had some sort of camera somewhere, but, well, good for you, man. I would have probably done the same thing if I could have thought that fast. It's amazing how many people don't read or just ignore and think that it's not serious, you know. There's a channel on YouTube called, I think it's GT Ogre or something like that. It's about a business out on the West Coast somewhere, maybe Washington. I don't know where it is exactly, but anyway, it's in a small city, and this business has cameras outside their business and signs all over the walls, no parking, will be towed, blah, blah, blah. And it's amazing. Every day and every night, people are constantly parking there to go. There's a club around the corner from this business, and it's funny. You got to watch these videos. If you get a chance, look it up. It's pretty cool. Man gets his car crushed. This was cross-posted on Our Regular. This story happened about 15 years ago. Cast: OP, me, female, 5'11". Bob, friend store manager. Chief, my boss. Entitled jerk who lost his car. Okay, the background. I worked as a firefighter as an investigator for an independent department. For information, investigator was the rank of lieutenant and was based out of a large station. 2 engines, 1 newer 110 tower ladder truck, relative later, 1 chief car, and 1 utility truck. Every day, the food duties changed from firefighter to firefighter. My chief's turn to cook when this happened. My friend Bob worked as a GM of a small grocery store. There was a long empty space in front of the store marked with the following sign: emergency vehicles only. Enter entitled jerk. He had a nice looking BMW car and always parked in the above spot every week. Bob told entitled jerk that he couldn't park there. I can park wherever the F I want. I make more in a day than you make in a week. My friend calls me complaining about entitled jerk. I agree to go and watch the spot. I get into our utility truck, which had the department decals on the door and a single red light on the dash. I park in the emergency vehicles only spot. As I'm walking in, I hear, "You can't park there, it's my special spot." I turn and look at entitled jerk. "Excuse me?" I ask. "I'm on official duties and can park there." I pointed to the decal on the door. Entitled jerk looks and says, "You can't be a firefighter, you're a girl. Move your truck and leave, C-word." Now I'm proud of my job. In a department of 2,000, I was one of 5 women on the department. I graduated top in my class. I have a shocked looking expression on my face. I get really peed off. I walk into my friend's office to get more information about his problem with entitled jerk. As Bob explains the continuous parking violations, and I see a small notice on the fire suppression system, sprinklers, that said the inspection was coming up. I smile as I get an idea. Cue the revenge. I get some information, leave Bob's office, and get into the truck heading back to the station. I arrive and head into my chief's office. I tell him of entitled jerk and what he said and does. Chief is a 6'6", 320-pound Samoan. He sees everyone as family. Chief's face gets bright red. I explain my idea and he gets very happy. He rushes out and calls a station meeting. I lay out my idea. We send out the station to do a fire drill / inspection by sending the old truck and 1 engine to the store. My friend will call the station the next time entitled jerk parks in the fire lane. Skip to 2 weeks later, Bob called the station stating that entitled jerk had just parked. As I'm thanking him, I hear his fire alarm go off. I rush and change into my investigator uniform with turnout gear, tell the chief, and send the trucks out. I ride in the Quint. We arrive and I see entitled jerk's car right in the emergency vehicle spot. I radio to have 1 engine to pull right in front of entitled jerk's car, and the truck to park right beside the driver's side door. I get out and the engineer starts setting up the ladder, which means 4 very large and heavy support struts go down, and 1 crushes the front of his hood. The alarm goes off. The lineman breaks his windows as he runs a large 5-inch draft line from the pump to the standpipes, the fire access to the sprinkler system, through his front seats. I go in to find Bob hurriedly getting people out as the alarm is going off. Entitled jerk runs out of the store, sees his car, and goes ballistic. I radio the PD dispatch and request a few officers to the store as I had a male who was impeding a fire operation. The dispatcher says that they will send a few officers. 3 officers show up and I ask them to follow me. They do when I call out, "Hey, leave my firefighters alone." Entitled jerk turns and sees me. He rushes up screaming that I'll pay for damaging his precious baby, his car. I stop him and tell him that if he didn't leave that he would be arrested. He gets in my face. "You did this. I'll have your job for this." He then turns, pushing me back. The officers and I rush and tackle entitled jerk to the ground. After they cuff him, I calmly inform EB that he was under arrest for assault and interference with a fire investigation, and that his car would be towed for parking in a fire lane. I later found out that it was crushed. Entitled jerk got 12 months probation for pushing me and interfering with a fire operation. He also got a fine of $500 for parking, the cost of the tow, and he lost his nice BMW. Moral of this story: don't park where you shouldn't, or bad things will happen. This story can be read on any and all YouTube videos. Well, thank you, OP. I appreciate that. We do love reading y'all's stories here. I'm not saying I've never stopped in a fire lane, but that's only if I'm staying with my vehicle. Like, I'm sitting there waiting for somebody to come out, or I'm dropping somebody off, usually only for a few minutes. Usually don't even put it in park. I just stop and I'm waiting. So it's easy enough to move. It's not like it's parked there. Parking in a fire lane and walking away from your vehicle is kind of a dick move, though. It's also why you never park in front of a fire hydrant. Well, I hope you enjoyed today's stories, guys, and if you did, would you consider doing me a favor? Maybe give this video a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, and click that little bell icon so you don't miss the fat guy with the beard telling you stories. See ya!